Alrighty, everybody, it is currently Saturday, September 20th, 2025, and I'm coming at you live from a physical state between sickness and health. This is, I don't know what it is. I've been coughing a whole lot. I'm hoping that it's just the AC and the general moldy slash damp, humid environment that I live in. I'm hoping it's that, but I don't know. I feel a bit of a sickness coming on. I've had a bit of the chills, a little bit of that. When you get under the blanket and you're hot, but you're still cold at the same time. When you get that when you're sick, I've had a bit of that coming on. Just overall, you know, not a not a great feeling. It really is one of the worst feelings when you're like, am I sick or am I just? Because right now I'm thinking that it's the AC blowing on me because my bed is right next to the AC unit in our window, but I haven't had the AC blowing in a while. It's probably 80 degrees in this room, and I'm still like, it's a little bit chilly in here, and I'm still coughing. So I'm thinking I'm gonna be sick soon. Which, yeah, I mean, getting sick in it's still summertime, especially in Kansas. Our summer lasts until like November, and then it's just winter. We don't really have a fall here. Um, but getting sick in the summer, it sucks for a multitude of reasons. For one, you're sweating, but you're cold at the same time. You know what I mean? Every time you go outside, it's the usual like energy that the sun gives you now feels just so oppressive. It's just like beating down on you mentally and physically. You can feel it like even through the fucking buckets of sweat that are coming out of your body, you can still feel the sun just penetrating you and fucking heating you up. Pause. But and you don't get any sympathy. You know what I mean? There's no one bringing you chicken noodle soup when you're, sick in the summer. Everyone's just being like, "Nut the fuck up, dude. It's summertime still. Just be sick in the summer." But I I'll get an occasional winter sickness, but I mostly get sick in the summertime, or around summertime, or a spring sickness, dude. Right after winter's over, God, a spring cold it's awful, man, because you already have, in Kansas, that's when the rain starts to come out. So it's just humid as all tits outside. It's not super hot, but like the sun, like I said, is just beating down on you, penetrating you from every single orifice in your body. It is just it sucks, You're coming out of winter and you're like, let's fucking go. I got a couple months of bullshit and then it's summertime. And even if you're working, summertime is still the best. You know what I mean? Because if you're working, you get off work at, 5 or 6, you head outside, it's starting to cool down. You know, it's not bad. It's not as bad as it could be. But I mean, working in the winter, geez, you don't see the sun. You literally do not see the sun for 3 months. And I think that's like a big factor towards depression that people don't consider is like millions and millions and millions of Americans, even a lot of dudes who don't work in offices and stuff, spend all day inside. And it's just like you never see the sun. You know what I mean? For like 8 hours a day, you're not able to see the sun. And then for another 8 hours while you're sleeping, you're not able to see the sun. I mean, and then in wintertime, you're not seeing it ever. You know what I mean? If you're working 9 to 5, you're getting a glimpse of the beautiful golden rays. And I think that's a major contributor to depression. And I'm not one of these people like the sun heals all our illnesses. And if you just look at the sun, then your cancer's going to go away. I'm not one of those people, but like not seeing natural light has to like mess you up mentally and somewhat physically. You know what I mean? That's that's why the Irish just sucks so much. You know, that's why the British are just like horrible, like mean, angry people. It's because they never get to see the sun. And like and then you have like Norway and Sweden and Finland and all that. And yeah, they don't get a ton of sun, but it's not like fucking England and Ireland where it's just like a constant like gray drizzle 24/7. And every once in a while a gray drizzle is fine. You know what I mean? When it's the middle of summer or really whenever and that overcast comes out, that's nice. That's a nice feeling to have. But that all the time is how you get Portland and Seattle. That's that's why Portland and Seattle exist in the way they do. And some people might argue that's due to like the politics and all that. Nah, dude, look at fucking Vancouver. Vancouver is the exact same. It's just drug-filled chaos and debauchery and just general disgustingness. And I think it's because they just don't see the sun. You need to look at it every once in a while. I get it. White people ain't the biggest fan of the sun. I look 40 years old because of the sun. But still, you gotta catch a glimpse of it every once in a while. Just a real quick, just let it beat down into your eyes real quick. And I think that's a very very big issue we don't address. We're not talking about the sun enough. We can't take it to the extreme level that like the Aztecs did, where it's like, all right, we got to skin a baby alive so the sun is happy. we can't we can't be doing that, but you got to catch a glimpse of the old rays every once in a while. You know, you can't scalp a woman and then throw her down a pyramid to make the sun happy or to make sure the sun shines on you. We can't be going that far with it, but we got to find a nice, intermediate range of never seeing it and pulling someone's still beating heart out of their chest so the sun keeps on going. We got to find a nice middle ground in there. And natural light, or not natural light, right? Synthetic, artificial light just isn't going to cut it at all. You get a different feeling in your body, and people are going to be like, "Oh, it's the UVs, or it's this, or it's that." I think that's all bullshit, dude. I think it's just like there's something about it. There's just something about the fact that it's natural that really gets you going. You can't measure it with science and all that bullshit. Fuck science, dude. We're saying fuck science today. We're disregarding science and saying hell yeah. We're saying hell yeah to the sun and to disabilities, dude. Once again, the sun plays such an important factor in like the overall health of a society. And this does tie into the disability thing a little bit because a country that doesn't get a lot of sun, almost none, is Iceland. Iceland gets almost no sun. They're just a fun hating group of people who are too apathetic to be racist. That's really what Iceland is. Like they're not they would be racist if they had an ounce of sun enter their country ever. But they don't, so they're just these apathetic, mean, just stoic, but not stoic because they choose to be stoic, but because their brains are so tired constantly from the fucking hellscape that they live in that they can't, process any real emotions. That's what Iceland is. And Iceland also, they took out the boys. If you don't know, this is like a thing that Iceland brags about, which just goes to show you how, I mean, just shitty that country is. They're like, oh, this is the land of fire and ice. And it's like, no, that doesn't sound appealing to me. I want to live in the land of like 75 degrees and like slightly humid. That's where I want to live. I don't want to live in the fucking land of fire and ice. I want like a nice moderate temperature that I'm not sweating in, but I'm also not, shivering in. That's what I want to live in. I don't want to live in either your balls are going to freeze off of your body or you're going to get melted alive by a fucking pool of lava. I don't, there's nothing appealing to me about that. And they don't have a tree on that entire fucking island. It is just a horrible place full of horrible people who committed a genocide. And they brag about this fact, and you might have heard this fact before, but they brag about the fact that they don't have anyone with Down syndrome, right? And it's not like they like found a cure or whatever. They just killed all the babies that had Down syndrome, which is like that's not even like a my body my choice thing. Like you're telling me every single chick that got pregnant with a Down syndrome baby in Iceland was like fucking rip it out of me piece by piece. Use a fucking vacuum to shred that thing alive and get it out of me. No. This was like I'm assuming it was some sort of like governmental or like NGO program to eradicate Down syndrome in Iceland. And when you just see a picture of that country, some things about it are beautiful. There is the landscape, the whole no trees thing. It works in Scotland and like Ireland and stuff like that. It does not work in Iceland because Iceland is just they don't have like the beautiful green lush grass that they do in Scotland and Ireland and all that stuff, and like the rolling hills. It's just like flat, rocky, and just like kind of brown. But there's something cool about that. But I think, you see it every now and again, or you take a trip to Iceland, you're kind of wowed by the landscape. But if you live in that 24/7, it's like the Great Plains. Like people, when Lewis and Clark went to the Great Plains, they were like, "Wow, look at how beautiful the Great Plains are. This amazing expanse of gold and brown and all that stuff." And it's nice. It's nice to visit, dude. But I'm from Kansas. I've been out there before, you know, and it's nice. It's nice for like 2 days. If you're out there for more than 2 days, you are a stronger man than I am, which that's not a high bar, but still, you're a stronger man than I am. Because living out there, and just now imagine that, but with no sun, none of like the fun, rootin' tootin' cowboy shit, just a repressed, like European style society of just brown and gray. God. And that's how you breed a population of people who are like, did you know we eradicated Down syndrome in Iceland? And it's like, oh, how'd you do that? Did you find some sort of fucking, genomic editing program where you could ensure that people, aren't born with these disabilities? And it's like, no, we just killed them all. we just we just killed them all before they even had the chance to fight back. Which is that's the most insane one to me. You know? It's like at least I'm never going to condone women killing their own kids or having their own kids killed. But I mean, if you're going to do it, wait till the little fucker is like 4 or 5 years old, then give him like a sword or something and, duel it out by combat. I would say, I would say that's my moderate position on abortion. If I was in the debates, all these people would be talking about what months you can and can't do it. I'd be like, no, dude, we're waiting until the little fucker's got a little bit of muscular development. Then we're giving him some sort of sword, and then he's got to have an advantage. So we'll give him a football helmet, and then the mom and the baby duel it out. Or not the baby at this point, I guess toddler. Is 5 a toddler? I don't know, dude. Any kid between the age of like 4 and 12, it's all the same to me. I can't even tell. I can't tell the difference in age. I can't tell the difference in gender. I just can't tell. I don't know. It's just like a weird. You got to give them all different hairstyles. That's why I think we have the whole girls have long hair, boys have short hair thing, is just so we can tell the difference when they're little kids. And then obviously there's like, because men were doing work and it's hard to do work with long hair and all that stuff while women were home. But I think the other reason is so we can tell the little fuckers apart. Because I'm telling you, when you look at a kid that's like 4 to 12ish, some of them hits him a little younger, some of them hits him a little older, but between there, it's like they're all the same to me. I cannot tell the difference. And now, especially in America with like the epidemic of fat kids, it's getting even harder, dude. And this is something that I've said before. If you want to be non-binary, you got to be committed to it. You got to be committed to non-binary, and you have to be 500 pounds. Because when a person is 500 pounds, it destroys their body and like their hormone system so much that it's impossible to tell the difference. So any of these bullshit ass people out there being like, I'm non-binary. No, you're a chick with a fucking pedo stash, all right? You're not non-binary. Call me when you're fucking 500 pounds, all right? You got to be dedicated to this shit. And that's how I feel about all of it. That's how I feel about the trans shit, too. I don't think you're a man or a woman, and I don't think you ever will be, but goddamn, you better be fucking committed to it. Like, if you want to be a F to M, you better get fucking huge. You know what I mean? You better be looking like Ronnie Coleman by the end of it all. And that's just what I think. If you're gonna be non-binary, you gotta be 500 pounds. Or super skinny also works, but that's not as sustainable, right? Because you gotta be like Holocaust skinny. You gotta alleged Holocaust skinny. You gotta be you gotta be real light. Just all around. You have to be like 90% bone type of skinny for me to not be able to tell the difference. But I don't know what that has to do with Iceland or Down syndrome. But that was a real genocide. The one that happened in Germany, I got some questions about it. But the one in Iceland, it's just they openly admit it. They're like, we eradicated a certain genetic group from our population, and it's like that's that's genocide. Like it's like the definition of the word. That's like the universally accepted definition of the word genocide. It's trying to eliminate a certain genetic population from your group, and it's like you did that, and then you're bragging about it, and it's like you. To me, that just means you hate fun. It's like you don't want any guys with Down syndrome around. Do you hate fucking WWE? Look, I'm not the biggest fan of WWE. Never have, right? And that's because I'm just a not fucking, light spirited enough person. Like when I was a little kid, I never believed in Santa when I was a little kid. And I never watched WWE. I was just a fucking bummer of a little kid. But, I wish sometimes I had a bit of that downy spirit in me. And I ain't talking Robert Jr. here. I'm talking about just fucking wide ass neck, fat tongue, Asian eyes, but they're super close together. Or are they far apart? No, they have far apart eyes. Um, yeah, that's just. I wish I had a little bit of that in me. I wish I just had like an eighth of an extra 21st chromosome sometimes, just so I can enjoy it all a little bit more. Just a touch more. Not a whole ton, but a touch more. But before we get into the ranking, I do want to preface this by saying, just putting this out there, just making this abundantly clear. Everyone with a disability is a better person than I am. That's just like a fact. It's something that I was like thinking about this episode, and I realized it. I was like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm just like bullying people with disabilities, although I kind of will be, but because it's a ranking, dude. We got to figure out who's number 1 and we got to figure out who's number 10. All right, we have to do it. And I realized I was like, all of these people are better people than I am, because if I had a disability of any kind, if it was even the slightest, like if I had a stutter, I would be the most annoying person on the planet. The amount of bitching that would come out of my mouth would be just absurd. It's already pretty high. You know what I mean? I already got a pretty good situation going on. I'm not disabled. I am very short, pretty ugly. I'm balding, and I'm not really great in social situations. But I mean, outside of that, I got a pretty good situation going on, and I still bitch endlessly. I'm still just finding the tiniest little fucking thing in my life to complain about. I'm like, why don't girls ask me out? I'm fucking, like I'm like that, but I don't have anything that's like medically wrong with me, at least that I know of. I'm sure there is something going on in there. Something just, I don't know exactly what it would be, but there's something going on there. But nothing, noticeable enough to be diagnosed, and I'm still so goddamn annoying. Like I was saying, people with Down syndrome, they're just fun, happy people, and we enjoy being around them. We enjoy seeing them. When I see a dude with Down syndrome or a chick with Down syndrome, once again, that goes back to the whole kids between 4 and 12 are the same regardless of age or gender. That kind of also applies to people with the syndrome. You know what I mean? They're looking for a good time. They're all constantly horny. I don't know what it is. It must be something with hormones or something, but they're all constantly horny. They're all jacked. They all have the exact same body. Every person with Down syndrome has that same. They're built like the bully fish from SpongeBob. You know what I'm talking about? The flounder dude, not Big Billy Bass, but the flounder that pulled up on that one day in driver's ed class. Yeah, Flat's the flounder. They're all built like that. They all look very similar. The Flat's the flounder. And they're all just looking for a good time. You know what I mean? They're all bros. Whether they're a chick or a dude, they're all bros, and I love them all, and they're all having a great time. But if I had Down syndrome, I would be the one not having a great time. I'd be like, oh my fucking god, can John Cena just come out already? Why do we have to watch fucking, Rhea Ripley fight? I don't care about Rhea Ripley. All right, I like her tits, I like her ass, but when the fuck is John Cena coming out? That's That's what I would be. I would be the mean, annoying guy with Down syndrome. I wouldn't be just one of the bros. I would even be an outcast there. I'm such an outcast and no one understands me. No one has the same. Once again, that goes back to the whole bitching thing. I'm gonna find something to bitch about no matter what. But I mean, if I had anything, if I had anything at all, like everyone makes fun of these people online, who have like slight OCD or autism and just like make it their entire personality. I would probably do the same thing if I'm gonna be 100% honest. If I'm gonna be fully transparent right now, I would be doing the exact same thing. I'd be like, you don't understand how hard my life is. Like I said, I do it without all that stuff. I do it without the autism and the OCD and, the gender, whatever. I do it without all that already. So if I had a touch of it, dude, even if it was self diagnosed, I mean, I'd be putting up fucking numbers on TikToks, just hashtags coming out my ass, dude. So they're better people than me. The people that really got it and are just like, fuck it, we ball, they're better people than me. But some of them aren't. But we're not going to be going over too many of those people today. We're going to be talking about autism. And autism is that one's just overall very tough. Obviously, we're going to talk about it more when we really get into the rankings, but there is something tough about that community. You know what I mean? The autistic community. I don't know. I was trying to find a way to combine both of those words, but there is, it's a spectrum, like they say. But to me, it's more so a spectrum of annoyingness. Where you got the ones that are just rolling around with an iPad that they use to talk, and they're looking at like Warhammer 40K figurines at GameStop or whatever, wearing their headphones and all that good shit. And then you have the ones that just like, they just got touched by it. You know what I mean? Just, they're like soccer players a little bit, that part of the autism community. Like, you just touch them and they're flopping on the ground like, oh my God, help me. Ref, kick him out of the game. Like, that's what part of the autism community is. So it's a wide and difficult spectrum to comprehend, not even in terms of diagnosis and severity, but just general annoyance. And it's just annoyance all over, and it's just a tough one, dude. It's a very tough one to do. But I'll list out the disabilities that we're going to be going over here. I already covered a couple of them, but we got Down syndrome, autism, blindness, paralysis, and we're just going to be going overall paralysis on that one. Cerebral palsy, deafness, dwarfism, which I guess counts. You know what I mean? The life isn't really built for people, for dwarves. Can we call them dwarves? I mean, if the official diagnosis is dwarfism, we can call them dwarves. And I feel like that's a far, better alternative than anyone's given to midget. You know what I mean? You like little person. It's funny. Little person is funny because they technically are little people, but like so are children. So, but I do think dwarf is probably the best one. And then we have Parkinson's and schizophrenia. So I tried to go a few physical and a few mental. And then I think cerebral palsy is a little bit of both. And obviously, all of them have their impacts on your mental and physical well being. But, autism's a purely mental diagnosis, but it can affect a lot of other physical aspects of your life. So I tried to keep it, nice and balanced here. I probably will show more preference to like the mental disabilities. I don't know, just because I think about it more. And then, oh, I forgot one on the list. We have, this one just says black. I don't, look, hey, I wrote the things down, but I didn't make the list, all right? I Googled it, I went to all these official sites, and then I asked ChatGPT about it just to like double check and see what was going on there, and it had black too. All right. So I don't know. I'm not the one that made the list, although it's not wrong. Um, I was not the one that put that on the list. All right. So we're gonna have to factor. No, it's not on the list. I mean, that was a tough one to choose. That choosing whether to go with black or woman or gay or really any of those things. I was gonna go short, but then I was like, we got dwarfism on there already. You know, I was trying to pick what like inherent quality to like say is a disability, and I ended on black just because I don't know, just being like black. Now, like woman's funny, but I don't know. Something about the one syllable is it's a harder punch. It's not long and drawn out, it's just black. Black is our it's our final disability. And the way some people talk about being black, you'd think it is a fucking disability, dude. Like seriously. I know, kind of the age of wokeness, yeah, being mainstream at least it's coming to an end, and now we're in the age of everyone kind of realizing that the government's going to do whatever it want, and it doesn't matter whether you call fucking criminals less than legal employees or whatever. That's kind of the stage we're in now. But I do feel like during the peak of wokeness, it was insane, dude. Like the way they were talking about black people, I was like, I would be mad. Like there were certain aspects of it that like made sense, right? Talking about the history of oppression and all that stuff, slavery, Jim Crow. Um, Not many were talking about the CIA and all the shit they did and all the shit that the government really did post civil rights movement. Um, but regardless, those are all valid points. And then there was like that one lady who was like, black people don't even know what the word computer is, right? They were like, and the argument was that having IDs to vote is racist, which it's a dumb argument in and of itself. But then you bring up there are black kids in the Bronx that don't even know what the word computer is. There are people in America that certainly don't know that word, but they're not in fucking New York City, dude. The Bronx is in New York City. The most it's the American city. They know what the fucking word computer is, dude. Times Square is all computers. They know, and I know Times Square isn't the only part of New York, but still, they know what the fucking word computer is. The people who don't know what the word computer is, ironically, are probably like white and maybe some Native Americans. People that live in these ultra isolated rural communities. But a kid from the Bronx, yeah, he's gonna know what the word computer is. And this bitch was on like CNN. She was going out to a fucking, a million party line Democrat boomers, just be like, these fucking black people don't know what the word computer is. That's like Donald Trump. You can say he's racist. He's never said anything as close to racist at that. The word computer. Not even, we're not even getting brand specific here. If she was like, black kids don't know what like a MacBook is, black kids in the Bronx, I'd be like, all right, that's maybe slightly more reasonable. Doesn't make any sense in the argument, but at least you could argue that they don't know what the word compute. They all have computers. A phone is a computer. They're all walking around with a computer in their hand constantly. They don't know what the word computer. It like just everything else that they were, and even now that they talk about of being like, black kids just they don't have the same opportunity in life, and they're born, in these inherently violent communities, and they're poor, and they're raised by single mothers, and they have no hope for themselves. And it's like, yes, all of that is true. It is true that black Americans, not African Americans, but like black Americans do tend to like live in these situations. But to be like, and there's just no hope for them, it's like, dude, they're you're treating it like they all have Down syndrome and they can't just do anything for themselves. They're people. They're just pretty normal people. Like, I make jokes. These people legitimately think that, like, being born in, like, an impoverished community makes you retarded or something like that. It's like, no. Plenty of these people, they don't have the same opportunities. I'll agree with you on that. But mentally they're pretty similar. They go through a lot more stuff that shapes them uh mentally to be different. But at the end of the day, they're just dudes who like kind of live the shitty life. They're not you know, they're not rolling around in a fucking, wheelchair saying blah, 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 and playing with an iPad all day. I think that's what they think, poor people and black people are like. And the reason I say poor people included in that is because these are all rich white people. These are all very rich, and I'm sure more than just white people. I'm sure that they span across all colors, but whites, let's be honest with ourselves, it's mostly the fucking white people pushing this weird racist bullshit. And it's like they just refuse to acknowledge that it's racist. I don't know. It's just so fucking it's odd to me. I'm like you think they just can't do anything? It's tough. It's way harder for them to do the same things, of like a white person born in like the suburbs or whatever, but they could still do it. They're not like physically or mentally incapacitated by being born in like a poor shitty situation. I don't know. But so if I was a liberal, I would say black because of disability. Because liberals are more racist than us smart conservatives, us Reddit conservatives, us 4chan Nick Fuentes loving conservatives. Um, but yeah, I think we'll get into the ranking, and I think for number one, this is once again we have a clear number one in this situation, at least in my mind, and that's going to be Down syndrome. And we're going like the sickest. Like it's almost like a think about which one you would want. And I'm going over this dwarfism, pretty cool. I'd say that's a pretty sick one. You can kind of like if you're a dwarf, not really anymore because of that bitch ass Peter Dinklage, but if you're a dwarf, you can just like be an actor and then you'll be put in anything. And even now, you could still probably do it because like A24 is just looking for like the most unusual looking people on the planet. Like if you load up any A24 movies and not some of the newer ones, but like those old school A24 movies were just it was Freak City. That shit looked like a what's that called? Ripley's I think it's called. The fucking like old circus sideshow shit. That's what fucking A24 movies used to look like. It was just like where was this guy designed in a lab or something like that? They had some real fucking freaks out there. People with like no bones in their face or whatever. And then they went mainstream and they started having to put, like hot people in their movie and like big time actors and all that shit. But back in the day, dude, back in the day, A24 was just like go to the nearest hospital, find a person that's currently going through physical therapy for some sort of like grave injury that happened to them and also was born with a disability and get that motherfucker in my movie. That's how they were running A24 back in the day. And I respect it. I respect that a lot more than this, like moderate bullshit they have going on. I like the new A24 movies. Warfare, that movie was fucking amazing. The Civil War movie was pretty good. But then they got like you got The Rock in a movie and you got Zac Efron and shit like that. And I'm kind of starting to think now that these, big time Hollywood actors, being in A24 movies, like A24 is being paid to put like Zac Efron or The Rock in these movies. And obviously they're being paid in terms of like box office numbers and shit like that. But I think it's like when a motherfucker can't, you know, become a legitimate like artsy type actor in and of themselves. Someone calls up A24 and it's like, dude, I got fucking, you know what I mean? I got Henry Cavill here or whatever. And he wants to start making movies about, I don't know, what it's like to be non binary in fucking Western China in the year 1400 AD. Can you just throw him in a movie real quick so he can, get that bullshit? Like, I feel like that's what A24 is kind of turning into. It's like these actors that want to be taken more seriously, which is, it's the most ridiculous profession to want to be taken seriously in. I've talked about this before. It's the dumbest. It's so, just everything about it is so stupid, right? Like every actor, they go on an interview with a big old fucking Johnny Depp hat, 1,000 wooden bead necklaces, leather fucking bracelets, a big ass V-neck T-shirt, and they just start to yes the art. So when I was playing the character, I had to imagine what it was like to be a construction worker, and I think ultimately at the end of it all, a construction worker is actually a deconstruction worker, and just fucking that bullshit. And it's like, dude, you're a dum dum. You're a moron. You I've said this before and I'll say it 1,000 times. You have someone else who writes the words for you, and then someone else tells you exactly how to say the words that someone else wrote. Can like that's if an actor was just like going out there just fucking recording themselves with an iPhone in the middle of the woods, I'd be like, and that like moved me emotionally, I would be like, fuck yeah, dude. You can be as much of a, artsy asshole as you want to be, but when literally everything is being done for you, you can't say you're an artist, right? It would be like, "Oh, I'm a painter and I paint, whatever comes to mind that day." And it's like, but someone gives me an image to paint and then fucking I'm watching like a Bob Ross tutorial in the background, right? That's the equivalent of that. These things aren't like coming from the actors' minds. They're just being told what to say and exactly how to say it. So yeah, I hate them as people. But dwarves, I'd still say dwarves, you could probably get into Hollywood pretty easily. I don't think you're gonna be the next Dinklage or whatever. Or you could, say fuck that and go to like a Jackass type situation and just have yourself shot out of a cannon. But I do think there's ample, opportunity for dwarves in the entertainment industry. Even micro wrestling and stuff like that. And obviously dwarves, they span a wide range. Once again, I think the most common type of dwarfism is achondroplasia, which that's the big foreheads, like the weird short little fat limbs. I think that's achondroplasia. But you have a wide range in there. Sometimes you just have a motherfucker that's like 4'5", just normal looking as shit, and just but 4'5", I feel like a normal dude could be 4'5". Just like a normal dude is like 3'6" or whatever. You'll get one of those every once in a while. And if you're a chick, you can make weird like pedophile bait porn. If you're one of those types of dwarves. And also, I just feel like a lot of people have dwarf fetishes. Now, if you're a chick and you're a dwarf, you shouldn't sell your soul. I'm not saying that. But if the situation gets bad enough, you can always fall back on that, and not everyone has that opportunity. Like, there's no fetish for people like me. There's not a fetish out there for like weird, kind of overweight, but kind of in shape, short dudes with like a face that is that's just like weirdly proportioned. There's no fetish for that, but there is a fetish for dwarfs. And I don't have a dwarf fetish, but I mean, every once in a while, go on Instagram Reels real quick and look up dwarf chick. You're gonna see what I'm saying here. You're gonna see what I'm saying. They got, I mean, a crazy tit to ass to like body size ratio going on. And I don't think I'd have, maybe, actually, a dwarf might be the perfect woman for me. She's shorter than me. She's got it going on. And then obviously my microscopic penis looks somewhat proportional when put next to her. But could you imagine, dude? Could you imagine fine ass dwarf shit pulls up, you know what I mean? Whips out a stepladder, you start making out at the party or whatever, and then you're like, all right, let's fucking go. I'm gonna get with this dwarf chick. And then you get in the bedroom and you pull out your dick and she's like, fuck that. Or even worse, you start to get the business and she's just like, you can tell it's like the fucking, the Adriana Chechnik like fake porn star, like like all that shit. Oh my god, that would be devastating. And that's, I guess, the risk you run when you know are dating a dwarf chick and you finally get to that stage, where it's like, I'm either gonna feel really good about myself or I'm gonna feel the worst I've ever felt about myself. So that's just it's an interesting conundrum to be in. I think dwarfism is probably the most interesting of all of these, all of these quote unquote disabilities. I wouldn't say outright that all of these, they're all disabilities of some kind, but like I said, all these people, they're a lot better than I am, just like at mentally being a human being. Um, but yeah, I don't know what I was gonna say there, but I do think Down syndrome is gonna go. I mean, it's a clear number one, guys. It's just everything about it rules so much, dude. That's like 90% of my TikTok algorithm is just dudes with Down syndrome. We got a lot of autism thrown in there. Darius. Darius is my main guy. If you don't know Darius, Darius is Darius. Why are you in my closet, Darius? Me. That's Darius, and he's my main guy. Every once in a while, I'll run across another one of them, but they're never Darius. You know what I mean? I think there's only one, you know, autistic kid that can like truly capture my heart, and that's Darius. I just love everything about him. He's just, even when he's getting a little mad, he's getting pissed off at his mom, Arisa. I just love him so much, dude. I genuinely love Darius. He's my favorite fucking. Just every time he comes across my algorithm, I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. We got Darius on the algorithm today. He's got a new stem. He's got a new dance that he's doing. His mom's feeding him boiled eggs. I love that dude so much. But I think part of the reason I love him is because he encapsulates just so many, aspects of Down syndrome. He's not always in a good mood. Obviously he's a person. He has bad moods and stuff like that. And I'm sure, it's the internet. We don't see every side of him. But he seems like a happy guy. He's always giggling and all that stuff. Does like cool, fun dances all the time. I love him. I love Darius. And I love the boys with Down syndrome and the ladies as well. I love. I, let me reword that. I love them as people. I think they're very good hearted. Oh God, I love the ladies with Down syndrome. I just can't keep away from them. I'm like a dog with a bone when I see ladies with Down syndrome. No, I think they're very good-hearted people, and they just don't worry about a lot of the same bullshit that we do. And sometimes you do got to worry about the bullshit a little bit. Sometimes they take it a step too far every now and then, but I think they're just like, if you give those boys a fucking 2 liter of diet mug root beer, an Xbox, you could give them the original Xbox and they'd just be happy as a clam. They just seem to just constantly being enjoying themselves. And so I appreciate them. I think their their simple minds are also some of the most pure. Simple things are often pure, you know? I don't know. Like natural food, I guess is the best comparison I can come up with there. It's like, it's simple. It's just steak on a grill. It's just a fruit from a tree. It's just, you put the potato in the oven. I feel like that's all good. And I feel like people with Down syndrome are all good. I just like them. They're just very, and obviously they all have their struggles like people do in, you know, I guess if you're born in like a poor family with Down syndrome, but that's the other thing about Down syndrome. You always got, this is one of my favorite fucking people on TikTok, but you always got, some lady who has like an uncle with Down syndrome and like just her passion is taking care of people with Down syndrome. And so you can just get thrown into basically a frat house. There's this one like Down syndrome, like frat house type situation on my TikTok. I don't know fucking what they're called. God damn it, dude. You might have seen these guys before. There's one, he's blind too. His name is Cam, and he's just the best fucking dude. He's blind. He always is rocking like Scooby-Doo gear, head to toe. And I don't know how he knows that much about Scooby-Doo if he's blind. Like his mom or the lady that takes care of him is just like a good lady, I guess, because she's always got him tripped out in Scooby-Doo gear, even though he's blind and he can't really tell the difference. He's got the Scooby-Doo hat with the fucking ears on, which usually seeing an adult with a hat that has ears on it just pisses me off to no end. It infuriates me, as deep as my soul goes. The fucking, those people who wear like those bike helmets, not like riding a bike helmet, but like motorcycle helmets with like the fucking cat ears on them, or the fucking chicks that just wear those things, and especially the dudes. I think that's the one positive thing about dudes, like being able to just like kind of beat the shit out of each other without any real consequences. I don't think I've ever seen a dude rocking like the cat ear headband. Fucking thank Christ, dude. Because that shit gets beat out of you real fucking young if you're a dude. But like those people, and then you have like the fucking Disney adults with like the goofy hat with the goofy ears and all that shit, or like the Mickey Mouse. The Mickey Mouse ears are even worse. That makes me physically violent. There's not a whole lot of things that make me physically violent. That is one of the things that does it though. When I see an adult with Mickey Mouse ears on, the fact that Disney even makes those things in adult sizes proves that this country should be nuked until it's a fucking parking lot. That's a travesty. That should not be something that we tolerate as a society, is wearing Mickey Mouse ears, right? Like at least if you're wearing like the hat with the goofy ears on it or whatever, like okay, you're at Disney. I don't know, maybe you just went by yourself or with like your girlfriend or whatever because you never went when you were a kid and you're like, I got to get one under my belt. and you buy the goofy hat because you needed a hat anyway, okay, that's understandable. But the headband with the fucking Mickey Mouse ears on it, especially with like when they put like the bow tie or like the Fantasia wizard hat on it, oh my god. Let's get ready to rumble, baby. I'm turning into a dude with Down syndrome and I'm practicing fucking WWE moves on your asses. I'm breaking you over my fucking knee. I'm like Bane with Batman. That's what I'm doing to you if I catch you anywhere, anywhere with Mickey Mouse ears on. And I guess, it's sorry, like I said, I'm kind of sick. Or maybe not. And it's just the mold and the fucking AC blowing on me, for the entire time I'm sleeping. Oh, but I got something going on here. But yeah, the Mickey Mouse ears, it's a good sign that I've, carved out a life for myself where I'm not around people who are wearing Mickey Mouse ears, even in like a public setting. I guess that's a good sign. But I mean, if I saw it, dude, if I saw it, just like a fat dude with a fucking greasy t-shirt, just t-shirts that has like a permanent grease stain on it, and he's walking around with his fat fucking ankles and his Mickey Mouse ears on. God, I would make Emmett Till look like a fucking joke. And that might seem extreme, but it's the truth. I would, you know, lynching isn't even the proper word for what I would do to an adult wearing Mickey Mouse ears. but, but when I see like a dude with Down syndrome doing it, I'm like, fucking hell yeah. Live your best life, brother. I don't know. I just like it a whole lot more. And Cam isn't the only dude in this frat house. It's a frat house. They got a whole bunch of them. One time, this one dude stole the iPad from another dude, and like the lady made him apologize, and I felt so bad for the dude that took the iPad away from the other dude. I was just like, I feel bad for him, bro, because he was like looking at the ground. He was like, I'm sorry I took the iPad away from you. I'm trying to do like Down syndrome fat mouth right now. They have that fat. I'm sorry I took the iPad from you. That's that's the best I can do. But they're just, and I do feel like it's definitely a Shane Gillis, part of the whole Shane Gillis era that we're living in right now. The Gillisization of, young men in this country. But I do think, an undoubtedly positive aspect of that is it opened our eyes to the Down syndrome community and just how great they are. Just awesome people. Obviously, there's downsides, but there's downsides with every fucking type of person. You know what I mean? People being like, you gotta cook for them and they live with you, and it's like it's tough. It's tough taking care of another human being, especially with disabilities. But it's like some of these fucking people that you guys are dating, you might as well just have a fucking frat house full of people with Down syndrome. All right, the fucking inept human beings that some of you have chosen to spend a decent chunk of your life with, you might as well just adopt like 8 grown dudes with Down syndrome and just have a fucking party with them. At this point, dude, it's shocking some of the things that you hear about and see. It's absurd. People that don't know how to like make food for themselves. It's like you basically, if you are dating a person, male or female, uh, and they can't cook for themselves, like in any way, shape, if the most complicated meal they can make is like ramen noodles or whatever, you are already living with a person with Down syndrome in all essence. And you don't get any of the benefits of it. You don't get any of the fucking, late night Mario Kart session, chugging Diet Mountain Dew, all that good. You don't get any of that. You're taking care of a person who is acting like they have a mental disability, despite the fact that they don't have any. So, how about you pipe down with the whole, Down syndrome people can be tough to deal with. Yeah, any person can be tough to deal with. I'm sure Down syndrome people have their challenges. I'm sure if you're like a mom with a kid with Down syndrome, that must be terrifying. Really being a mom of like a boy, like a single mom of a boy, just sounds terrifying because it's like by the time that thing's 12 years old, you pose no physical threat to it anymore. That's a terrifying. You have like this emotionally, kind of unstable, immature thing that could just grab your neck and twist it off your head like a fucking chicken. And with Down syndrome kids, they're probably 8 years old and they could do that. you know? They're probably 8 years old, fucking basically Bane. Like they've been watching wrestling their whole lives. They know how to destroy a person, and they have the physical capabilities to do it. So that must be just generally not a great environment to be in. But I don't know, if you're a chick with like an emotionally immature dude, it's basically the same thing. Once again, without any of the upside. There's no upside there. So Down syndrome is going to be number one. And we have autism, blindness, paralysis, cerebral palsy. I'm going to put dwarfism at number two, for a couple reasons. I don't think it's obviously, you know, you got the spectrum there. You got the ones that are just like a normal person but smaller, and then you got the achondroplasia bros, and then you got some of them where they're so short that like none of their joints work properly. But I feel like that's a pretty small percentage of the people that have some form of dwarfism. I feel like most of them, surely you're going to have some sort of chronic issue, just from the fact that your body looks the way it does. But I think overall, it's not as extreme. And there's just, I mean, the comedic, and really just every opportunity you have. It's just, you could kind of do, like anything in the entertainment industry is like a dwarf could do that. I would rather have a movie with like, if they just made a like a regular movie but it was all dwarfs, that would be the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. Either it would be the funniest fucking thing ever, watching like Taken, but Liam Neeson is like a tiny Irish dwarf, a fucking leprechaun running around like that. That is funny. But it could also be like the most heartwarming, movie that you've ever seen, or like that movie Warfare, but with all dwarfs. The fucking action would be completely different. You know what I mean? They have to use like their hands and feet to to crawl up the stairs and all that stuff. I I think every movie would be better if it only had dwarfs in it. I can't think of a single one. There Will Be Blood, dude. Fucking Apocalypse Now, if it was all dwarfs, would be just so fucking good. It would make that movie significantly better. And then just like one, I'm imagining almost like a Muppets type scenario. Like, you know how in the Muppets movie, it's all Muppets, and then there's just like one like dude, right? Like in my personal favorite is the Muppets Christmas Carol. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And it's just like Michael Caine is like the only, there's a few other dudes there, but like Michael Caine is like the only just regular dude. I'm imagining that, but with dwarves. And it sounds amazing. And the thing about it is, you might think that every single movie would be a comedy movie. Some of those Muppets movies are like really fucking good. And I'm just imagining that, but instead of, Snuffleupagus or whatever, I don't know, is he a Muppet or is he a Sesame Street type dude? Jim Henson made it also. It's all the same anyway, but, instead of that, it's fucking just Dinklages just running around. And not even Dinklages, because Dinklage, he's got the dwarf body, but he does not have the dwarf like face. He does not have like he has a pretty like standard head. It looks like you just put a normal dude head on a dwarf body. But I'm talking like big fucking beluga foreheads, looking like these motherfuckers could echolocate or something like that, just running around. And I think every movie would be made better by it. You know, we'd have to maybe do like an opposite eugenics thing to get enough dwarves. I'm talking classic achondroplasia here. Although, hey, if we got to deal with one of those ones that's, basically just a nugget, I think that could work as well in some of these movies. But we might have to do like a reverse eugenics type situation, right? Like that episode of The Twilight Zone where that chick is like, she needs to get the plastic surgery to like look like everyone else in society, or she's going to be rejected, and then they take off the thing and it's like she's ugly as shit. Although I'm not saying dwarfs are ugly as shit. Like I said, dude, some of the ones I see on fucking Instagram reels, I'm not upset at in any way, shape, or form. I do not get, I do get turned on looking at them sometimes. All right, if you want to hear the truth, and these ones, they don't have like the weird, when dwarfs have like bowed legs and like their muscles are so thick and stuff like that that it looks like their leg is just like a stump with like a little foot at the end. These chicks don't have that, dude. It's hey, it's ratios, man. I'm telling you, it really is ratios. They're just able to support a better tit to ass ratio. and it doesn't look unnatural, right? Like when a chick gets plastic surgery, they have like huge tits and a huge ass. You're like, all right, that's fucking fake. But when like a dwarf has those same proportions, maybe it's the head. Maybe the head is the thing that really makes a difference there because their head is so big anyway that you know, them having the ass of like a, a regular sized chick doesn't look that off because their head is basically the same size as a, it might even be double the size. I think I think like dwarf heads are like double the size of a regular. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what dwarfism is. Like all the protein and calcium and stuff that it takes to build a body is put in their head. So then their body's kind of like a squat type scenario. I think, overall, this is not an awful, not the worst, not the worst. Pretty fun, ample opportunity to get into the entertainment. It just really anything. Once again, like the dudes with Down syndrome, just seeing a dwarf makes your day better, dude. Like this one time I was at a party, one of the 3 parties I've ever been to in my life, but there's this dwarf there. And what was his name? Javion? Glenn. Glenn was his name. I don't know why I thought Javion. His name was Glenn. And we were doing like, it was a anything but a cup night, and he was drinking, and we were feeding him alcohol like he was a normal sized dude. Although those boys do get heavy, you know what I mean? Like a 4'5" dwarf could be 180 pounds, and not 180, but like 150, and like look pretty standard. So, but we were feeding him alcohol the whole night, and he was at one point there was this dance circle, and he got in there, and it just infinite. I was sober, right? I'm sober. I don't really drink ever, and I'm especially sober at parties because just, I mean, me drunk, surrounded by other people, I'm gonna say something. I have said something, so so I'm typically sober at parties, and I was like dead sober, and I think that was the night that I had a flat tire, and it was just so much bullshit to get there. But that dwarf just made, oh my god, it was beautiful to watch. It was like the end. This is a niche reference, but the movie After Sun, it's another A24 movie, but like the end of it is just like this big, like interpretive dance scene. And I didn't really feel that emotional watching it. I know I should have felt emotional watching it, but I didn't. But watching this dwarf boogie down, drinking out of a Pokemon, like one of those metal Pokemon containers all night, just in the fucking middle of this dance circle, just doing whatever came to his giant fucking head, dude. God, it was beautiful. I almost shed a tear. Shout out Glenn the Dwarf. Great guy. Or little, I think dwarf is just, it's the name of the condition. It's, I mean, it's a great name. It's one syllable. It's quick. It's to the point. Everyone knows what it means already. I think we have to bite the bullet here and just start calling them D-boys. You know what I mean? They're the dwarfs. There's nothing, sorry, I had to wipe my nose. There's nothing shameful about that. All right, there's nothing shameful about being a little D man, or I am a little D man, but I'm not a dwarf, if you know what I mean. But hey, the boys rule. All right, so what do we have left? Autism, blindness, paralysis, cerebral palsy, deafness, Parkinson's, and schizophrenia. I'm liking cerebral palsy for number 3. I know autism is kind of fallen in the rankings here, but just the amount of people that claim they have autism and just how annoying they can be about it. I just can't. I might put it at number 4. I cannot let it into the top 3, dude. They ruined it. They ruined autism. Autism used to be like, this motherfucker can code, an AI in 2 seconds or whatever. Now it's like, if you clap around me, I'm gonna pull out all my hair. Like that's what autism has turned into, and it's like, at a certain point, everyone has a baseline ability to regulate their emotions, right? Even sociopaths who have no emotions are able to regulate their behavior in some way. At a certain point, and this may be completely wrong, and I maybe don't know how autism works at all, but I feel like at a certain point, we're making excuses for these people. They're just being like, oh yeah, they're allowed to, oh, he's grabbing you, sorry, he's autistic. It's like, it goes back to the whole Pedro Pascal anxiety thing. It's like, no, man, you have to learn how to fucking regulate your emotions at a certain point. You can't, you can't fucking, have to need to go to another classroom to take a test. At that point, you shouldn't be in college. I'm sorry. It's just the truth of the situation. In order to be These people that are like, oh, we're just the same as everyone else. And it's like, no, you're not. You have 1,000 fucking special rules that everyone has to follow to be around you. So, no, you're not like everyone else. And I do think that that's a very small contingency of the community, but it's a very loud and incredibly annoying contingency of that community. But then you just have the ones that are just like, yeah, dude, I really love gibbons. There's just something about a small, like, orangutan gorilla thing. It really gets me going, and I appreciate that. I appreciate those people, and I don't want them to be silenced. For fucking autism being like a social, talking, like mental processing disorder, those motherfuckers get loud and annoying as shit. They're out here giving speeches in front of fucking 50,000 people at some liberal arts college in Oregon or whatever, just being annoying as shit. It's like, I thought you had autism. I thought you didn't feel comfortable in social situations. Now you're getting up on stage, talking to 1,000 people, and being like, and then you're not allowed to clap after I'm done. Shut the fuck up. Learn how to regulate your emotions. But, and I think cerebral palsy, I'm gonna put it at number 3, because this is a combo one right here. Because cerebral brain type shit, but it mostly affects motor function. And I think the only reason it's in number 3 is because of Walt Jr. from Breaking Bad, or Flynn. My name is Flynn. But I do think that boy, I do think he gave him a pretty big bump. From my understanding, his case of it isn't as extreme as it is presented in the show. But I think he gave him a big bump, because he was just, once again, he was just like a regular dude in that show that had cerebral palsy. He did have a little bit of that, like being babied by his parents and all that stuff, but he was just a pretty regular dude throughout that whole show. And I think that gave him a pretty big boost. And they're not like the autism community and all that stuff where they're just constantly speaking out and bitching about it. And I think also the reason for that is you can't fake it. You can't fake having cerebral palsy. You either have it or you don't. But some of these people with autism are like, I think you're just a hoarder and you don't want to admit it. Like, I collect Funko Pops because I have autism. And it's like, no, I think you were molested as a kid and your brain never progressed past that point. And so now you have to buy fucking cheap plastic shit to keep yourself entertained. I think that's what that is. I don't think it's autism. But the boys with cerebral palsy, they either got it or they don't. And I think, overall it's a pretty chill group of people. I've never had that shit like shoved down my throat. I've never had someone with fucking cerebral palsy pull up on like my For You page being like, you're not allowed to walk fast around me because I have cerebral palsy. I've never. Okay, I am bullying people with a disability, but still, that's kind of how they talk. They kind of slur their words like that. But I've never had, any of that bullshit from him. I've never got any guff from him. And Walt Jr. from fucking Walt Jr. from, that's just a general retard voice. That's not really how they talk, but they do have a certain way that they tend to talk. But I do think it gave him a big boost, particularly because boy's decently handsome. You know what I mean? Not the best looking dude of all time, but he's a pretty decent looking dude. He's just a chill dude, He's got cerebral palsy. It's a part of his life. You can't deny that. But I mean, I'm looking at him right now. He does, and they have, I think overall, I'm sure there's different types of it, but I do think it's just like a general motor function thing. So he does kind of have like, he'll do a like quick bobblehead type of thing. But yeah, the boy's pretty decent looking. You know what I mean? He's a pretty good looking guy. So I think he gave him a big boost. I almost turned into a big boost in there. I turned it into it there. But I do think just overall, he is one of the reasons that I think it's just one of the chill groups of them. They're just like, yeah, I walk around with crutches. Some of us have to be in a wheelchair or whatever, and they don't have like a Stephen Hawking, right? He had ALS. And cerebral palsy people, they don't have like a Stephen Hawking who's like going around in a wheelchair being like, you're an idiot if you believe in God. Like they're all just rolling around, living the good life. Although once again, I do think they do have some mental issues that come from it, that stem from it. Obviously, I think it mostly affects just like the way they move, but yeah, pretty good one. Pretty, I wouldn't say minimal impact on life. That is, it has a couple things holding it back. One, pretty decent impact on your life. And then also, the short name for it is CP. So you got to be like, hey, that dude has CP. And then fucking everyone's like looking at him and they're like, okay, cerebral palsy. Just say the full fucking thing. That's one of the ones where we just have to say cerebral palsy. You can't be shortening it to CP. So I think it can have a decent impact on your life, but I think overall, pretty chill group of people. I just like them as people, and because I think they're so chill, I think living with it would obviously not be great, and I obviously would be a gigantic pussy about it, but yeah, I don't think it's. They just seem chill. So it's like if they're chill, then I could probably chill with it too. And then number 4, we're putting autism there. I've said everything there is to say about autism. Um, I do get a bit autistic at times, undoubtedly. Um, but yeah, I don't, you know, I just got nothing new to say about it. Everything that's been said about autism uh, is what I would say as well. So I got nothing new to say about it. It goes at number 4 because you got a big dichotomy there. You know, you could end up with just like a chill nerd who's like, yes, he watches hentai with like some questionably aged women in it, but he's not gonna fucking do anything about it. And then you got the people that are like, no, me being a pedophile is okay because I have autism. It's like, no, dude, it's not. Just go on fucking roll34.com, search up whatever fucking, Family Guy character you're into and beat off to that. You have those people that just use autism. Oh, I have autism. And there's a few other ones like that, like OCD, PTSD. People just like claim that shit, be like, no, you don't understand, I have PTSD. And back in the day, they were doing that shit too, right before all these things became official diagnoses. But they were being like, no, I was possessed by a demon spirit, right? Like a dude would go out, get drunk as shit, cheat on his wife, come home, beat the shit out of her, and he'd be like, baby, 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 I was possessed by a demon, all right? No, you don't get it. I was possessed by a demon. That's kind of what autism and some of these other, disorders that can be difficult to diagnose are, or like you could, right? Like if I walked into a doctor's office, I could like memorize the autism test, bang that bitch out, get diagnosed with autism. But if I was like going in there being like, I got cerebral palsy, they'd, stick a needle in me somewhere and then they'd be like, shut the fuck up and get the fuck out of here. So, yeah. I think, once again, that's why cerebral palsy kind of has the reputation that it does, because everyone that has it, but everyone with autism, hey, man, hey, I think you're just like an unlikable person, and now you're like, autism. Yeah, I watch anime all the time, and it's like, is that because you have like a weird hyperfixation on it, or is that because no one wants to hang out with you in real life? And I sympathize with those people because I kind of am one of those people, but I'm not stealing valor. I'm not saying I'm a Navy SEAL. I'm not saying I was part of Delta Force. I'm just accepting the truth of the situation. So autism at number 4. And then what do we have left? Blindness, paralysis, deafness, Parkinson's, and schizophrenia. I thought I had 10 on here, but maybe I think I only have 9. So we're just going to have 9. Oh, blindness. I like blindness. I think that, once again, I think I'll put blindness at number 5. Because I'm looking at the rest of these, and you got a few decent things on here, but I think blindness, from one, in terms of like living with it, you can hear people talk, right? And just being able to hear people talk is such a benefit to your life overall. Like, that's one of the main reasons why, or one of the main things in regards to dementia is like hearing people talk and like considering their words and all that stuff. And obviously, deaf people have like sign language and all that stuff. But at a certain point, you can become like so physically incapacitated that sign language no longer works for you. And then also, you don't have that auditory input like that. And I think a visual input is very important. But blindness, and this is something that I learned about blindness, there's never been a person that was born blind that has then been diagnosed with schizophrenia. So you got that clear. You don't got to worry about, you know, becoming like an internet streamer that is a severe alcoholic and having everyone like mock you constantly if you're blind or if you're born blind. Maybe you can become blind and you're still schizophrenic, which that's a tough one, you know. But if you're born blind, then you're kind of clear of schizophrenia. You got a lot of heroes. You got a lot of them to look up to. You got Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder, uh, some of those dudes on TikTok. There's a lot of blind skaters on TikTok. You got a lot of those guys to look up to. I can't think of any deaf people that have anyone to look up to. But fucking Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles, automatically, those are two very, very big guys that you can look up to. And then also you got Daredevil. So you got a wide range of blind representation, and Toph from Avatar. But seeing things is pretty great. But I feel like a lot of the things that can be seen can also like be made up with other senses, right? Like I feel like, you know, a flower, seeing a flower, smelling it and feeling it and all that stuff, that can kind of make up for it in a few ways. But in terms of like listening to music or listening to a person talk or, you know, all of that shit, I don't think the other senses can, you know, make up for it as much, which is why deafness is below blindness in this ranking, you know. And just being blind, you kind of have that Pedro Pascal anxiety excuse to grope women. You do have that a little bit. You can't be like, are you actually a woman? I'm gonna need to double check here because you could just be a dude with a voice that's tricking me. And then you get a feel, you might not get a feel tit. You're definitely gonna get a feel at least a touch of pussy, at least enough to confirm that there's not a bulge there, which closer than I ever got. So good for you. um, yeah, but I think overall, they don't have the same detriments that deaf people, like no music, never. That would be a tough one. I don't think a lot of people would be able to like happily live with that. Although many deaf people do live happily. And then blind people, they don't have the same, you know, annoying shit that deaf people do. With like the sign language interpreter in the corner of shit. It's just like, and people are like, well, sign language, you need sign language there because not all of them can read. And it's like, well, if you can read sign language, then you can fucking read English, dude. My dumb ass can read English, and I, as try as I might, cannot learn sign language. You know, I never, it just doesn't compute in my brain. Although I never really tried, I'm sure it wouldn't compute in my brain. So if my dumb ass can fucking read the words, your deaf ass can read the words. All right, and you also are dumb because you can't talk, right? Every time you talk, it comes out like this. Hello, my name is. Um, once again, bullying disabled people. Yeah, and I don't. Obviously, you got a lot of the deaf boys that are just chilling, but that sign language thing, just something about it irks me a little bit. Where it's just like, dude, you can read words. If you can read sign language, you can read words, and I do feel like a lot of that is kind of just being perpetrated by not uh or propagated by not deaf people, right? I feel like most deaf people are like, I mean, yeah, sign language interpreter is nice. And then obviously for live events, you need it, right? You can't have live captions or whatever. I understand that, but like some of the other shit, man, it's like we don't need a special sign language version of it. Like HBO did this recently with a few like movies and TV shows they have on HBO Max, and the production quality of it is insultingly low. It is so, it's infuriatingly low. Like if I was a disabled or if I was a deaf person, I would be mad because it's literally just a dude in a corner with a black t-shirt doing sign language. It's like you couldn't get like fucking, you know, an Asian person who can do that shit 10 times fucking faster than a honky, and he's just wearing like the black t-shirts that I wear. I think he literally took a black t-shirt out of my laundry basket and turned it and put it on, and then went to the HBO studio to do sign language in the corner of the fucking Last of Us. I think that's what that guy did. It was like he had like cat hair and dandruff on his shirt. It was so goddamn disrespectful to the deaf dudes. So deaf people though, but blind people are number 5, and then we have paralysis, deafness, um, Parkinson's, and schizophrenia. Tough one, tough one. We'll go Parkinson's number 6 because Then you can just get high all the time. That's really the only reasons Parkinson's is going where it's going. It's something you can get it when you're young, but most people get it when they're older, so it's not going to affect you your entire life. And then there's going to be some fucking bitch being like, no, I had Parkinson's when I was 18. It's like, okay, you're one in a million, dude. I'm talking about like most people that get Parkinson's. And one of the like the treatments for Parkinson's is weed. I guess it just like slows your brain down, I guess. And then you can just like kind of be more normal. Because I think Parkinson's, it's all in your brain. It has nothing to do with like, once again, it's like cerebral palsy. It doesn't have to do with like physical, like muscular degeneration. It's all in your brain. So I know for like one dude, they put like a chip in his brain and just like shocked the shit out of him, which I thought we left that shit behind in like the 1960s. But they're still doing electroshock therapy for like mental things, like mental illnesses, and also disabilities like Parkinson's, which and mental illness and the mental disability, and then shut the fuck up. All right. Getting angry at no one. I'm getting angry at myself. But I know there's people out there like that. But Parkinson's, yeah, you just have an excuse to be high all the time. It's like, dude, why are you fucking puffing on the shizzy in public, bro? It's like, I got Parkinson's. I don't know. And then you also, like, I'm addicted, severely addicted to nicotine. And one of the things they say, like, early in your life is, like, smokers have way lower of a chance of getting Parkinson's compared to, like, other people who have, like, the same genetic shit that gives you Parkinson's. So then you have an excuse to be like, well, my fucking, my second uncle, he got Parkinson's. So I got to be able to, smoke indoors, right? So you have an excuse to be addicted to nicotine and weed. That in and of itself is just such a great, disability. Then you got the downsides of it, of the people who like refuse to do weed and they're just like fucking eating spaghetti and getting sauce everywhere like a fucking toddler at a high chair. You have those dudes, but I think overall, it's chill, man. You can just be high, throwing a fucking zen, being like, "Bitch, get off my ass, dude." Your wife is like, "Why are you high again?" And you're like, "You want me to fucking suffer? You want me to suffer? Listen here, bitch." So, yeah, Parkinson's number 6. All right, and then we got paralysis, deafness, and schizophrenia left. Deafness is going at number 7. I think it's just blindness, but the community is a little bit more annoying and you can't listen to music. And then schizophrenia is my least. I would. Oh, that's a horrible a condition I would not wish on my worst enemy. I don't even know why I put it on this list. That's because some of those dudes seem to be having a pretty decent time. Like Terry Davis. Terry Davis seems like he's having a little bit of fun. That Daniel Larson dude, he seems like he gets down a little bit. And a lot of them are always having fun. They're screaming at a brick wall somewhere. That's like a good therapeutic thing. Just screaming as loud as you can at a brick wall in an alleyway somewhere. That probably gets a lot of anger out. So yeah, you're operating the rest of the day and you're hearing like voices whisper in your head about whatever they're whispering about. But you got all your anger out because you just screamed at a brick wall for 3 hours while you were also high on fentanyl. So it was pretty chill experience. And then you got the dudes like, what's that guy's name? John Nash, the guy from A Beautiful Mind, which is Jennifer Connelly. She's so fine in that movie. But you got the dudes like that who are just like, yeah, this guy kind of made me drown my baby this one time. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie. Sorry. I'm also fucking good as shit at calculus. Or he wasn't doing calculus. He was doing like codes, which the boys with schizophrenia love codes. It makes sense why he was such a good code breaker. They're constantly looking for codes, dude. They're like in the Bible, flipping through every single page. They're obsessed with the Bible. That's another upside to schizophrenia, dude. If the Christians are right, most of the schizophrenics are, meeting the big man upstairs because they're just constantly flipping through the Bible, highlighting different verses. Every once in a while, you end up with like an MK Ultra Charlie Manson dude who, is being, paid by the CIA to start a race war. Every once in a while you end up with that. But most of the time they're just highlighting verses being like, God's talking to me here, And you're just chilling in a mental hospital, high as shit on Zoloft, wearing fucking pajamas all day. It's a pretty decent setup, The whole voices thing, and if you can't afford to be in a hospital, then yeah, your life is awful. You're high on another thing, but you're still chilling in pajamas. Now you're just high on fentanyl, wearing pajamas. you know, in a tent somewhere. It's not the most comfortable living conditions, but fuck, it could be worse. You could be paralyzed. But I think the thing that being paralyzed has over schizophrenia is just like, it's more because it's like an obvious thing, because it's like an obvious thing when a person's a quadriplegic or a paraplegic. I, I think that just like gives people so much more sympathy, right? Like even back in the day, like in the 1800s or whatever, if you were rocking a wheelchair, no one was like trying to pull you out of the wheelchair and being like, stand up straight. What are you doing, young man? You need to stand up and walk around and wear a suit and all that stuff. They'd be like, no, he's in a fucking wheelchair. But back in the day, if you were schizophrenic, some dude would just come up to you and like beat the shit out of you and be like, fucking be normal. What is it? And people still do that, dude. I'm not any better than anyone else. I would probably do that. I'd probably just go brass knuckles to the face, being like, "The fucking God's not talking to you. You're not fucking Moses." Like that's what schizophrenic people had to go through back in the day, and that's what even a lot of them go through now. Like a lot of the shit, a lot of these, and I get it, I understand it. They're not acting in a socially appropriate way, but yeah, they still go through it like that. Paralyzed people, they're not going through it like that. Like everyone's like, "Fucking what's up, Professor X?" And the schizophrenics, they don't got superheroes like the fucking paraplegics. It's one of the most, like schizophrenia is the most, and I hate to say this, dude. I hate to sound like a fucking lib, but it's so demonized. Like schizophrenia, and it's so like unacknowledged. I think it's just like the kind of grotesque nature of it, quite frankly, and the very frightening nature of it. People just like completely disregard it as a mental illness, right? Like it doesn't, like people are like, we need to care about people with mental illness, and they imagine like just some like hot dude who got depressed and ended up on fentanyl or whatever because his wife died, and now like you have to take this hot dude into your house and like take care of him and all that stuff, and he ends up loving you and he has a big dick and he builds a house for you and all that stuff. Or we imagine like a depressed chick who like cuts herself and she's super hot and she dresses like an emo. Like we romanticize a lot of mental illnesses, and we kind of leave schizophrenia in the background a little bit. We don't think about it and acknowledge these people's actions as not truly being their own actions, because they really do not have, like, their perception of reality is just so terribly different from ours that like they could be properly regulating their emotions. They could be having a proper emotional response to a certain situation, but because their reality is so different than the objective reality, everyone, we all have our own sense of reality, but theirs is just, it's so extremely different than our own that we view them as like being inappropriate in public or whatever, when it's like, dude, no, he's being appropriate. He just isn't perceiving the same things that we are. And it's just one of those ones that people don't give a shit about. They don't think about it ever. They're all like, oh, we need to help depressed people or people with PTSD or blah, blah, blah. And they never think about schizophrenia. And it's just like, those boys need it just as much. They need it more than everyone else, dude. If you're fucking depressed or whatever, like, I don't know what to tell you. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or go get addicted to fentanyl, right? Depression sucks, and obviously I've never experienced like chronic depression. I do get the seasonal depression. Like I said, you're not seeing the sun all day. Your mental's getting fucked up a little bit. But, I think they're all just like as valid as each other. But because schizophrenia is this one where it kind of forces these people to act in like a completely socially inappropriate way, we just, demonize it a whole lot more than we do depression and, bipolar and whatever the fuck else. So I don't think we don't give them enough credit, dude. Like, could you imagine just walking around all day and like that little voice in the back of your head is 10 times louder and there's fucking 50 of them and they're all whispering different shit to you all day? Dude, I'd never stop screaming at the wall, dude. I would die from being up for like 50 hours straight because I was screaming at the wall. Like that's what I would be doing if I was schizophrenic. And it's like all these dudes are like, all they're doing is like being addicted to fentanyl and like dying in the streets and like stealing from people. I mean, yeah, that sucks. It sucks that they're doing that, but the the type of like delusions and like just separation from reality that they experience, it's like they could be doing so much worse, and we should appreciate them for the fact that they're not doing that shit now. So we got to give the boys a bit of credit for being able to like stand up for themselves, like mentally, or I guess they're standing up against themselves, kind of. Or maybe one of them's right. I feel like that's the other thing we're missing out on in society. Is like one of them's got to be right. One of them's got to have a decent idea. Just every star aligned. A broken clock is right twice a day. I feel like there's got to be a few schizophrenics out there that like. Yeah, he kind of thought he was Jesus and he was like pouring bleach in his wall to kill the demons in there or whatever. But like the motherfucker, he could make some fried chicken or whatever. Like, we're missing out on probably some pretty good geniuses, or some people with some pretty decent ideas because they are, putting Bible verses on the wall or whatever, like designing a time machine, but also at the same time, I don't know, they're good at calculus or whatever. So I feel like we're missing out on a pretty big opportunity here, but I'll go through the rankings real quick and then we'll end the episode. I've already done this for an hour and a half. So 1, we have Down syndrome. 2, we have dwarfism. 3, we have cerebral palsy. 4 is autism. 5 is blindness. 6 is Parkinson's. 7 is deafness. 8 is paralysis. And 9 is schizophrenia. We kind of didn't talk about the boys with paralysis as much. I don't know. It's got its downsides. It's got its upsides. You got a bunch of different types in there. But I think it's just overall... I've said the word overall 90 fucking times in this episode. Goddamn, couldn't think of a different word than that, but they're just, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a run-of-the-mill type of thing where it's just like your legs and your arms don't work. And once again, you're running the gambit there where it's like you either end up with just the legs not fully working or only your head's going to be able to move. So, a very wide spectrum there. But that's all I've got for today's episode, guys. I hope you have a good day, a good week, a good year, a good life. Shout out Joshua for being a nice-ass dude, smart dude. Said he did like a thesis or something about psychology. Pretty smart dude. So shout out to him and shout out to everyone else. I hope you have a good day, a good week, a good year, a good life, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.